Welcome back to Al's Joint. Today we're going to be talking about the war plan texting scandal that rocked Washington, D.C. This past week, Secretary of Defense P.D. Hegseth inadvertently texted war plans to Jeffrey Goldberg of the Atlantic. Of course, this administration went right into the lie and deflect campaign that they normally launch, but this wasn't enough this time because there was so much evidence out there. It was clear that somebody screwed up. So let's take a look at who we're dealing with here so you can know why we should have expected this screw up. So P.D. Hegseth, the former Fox News host, was hired by President Trump to become Secretary of Defense, and he was barely confirmed by the Senate by one vote. That vote was actually a tie-breaking vote by Vice President J.D. Vance. I call him Dance because that's what he does. He dances around every issue. But that's how Hegseth was confirmed. His history has been, he's well known for being overindulging in alcohol. In other words, he's a drunk. He's also been accused numerous times of sexually abusing women. Even though everybody ignored his history of being a drunk, a partier, someone who had little regard for people of color, for women, for Muslims, but he screamed and raged about how everything was DEI related, all the hires in the Defense Department, and he was going to clear that out, and he was going to make sure whoever got hired was only hired because of their qualifications, even though he wasn't. So what is the first thing he do? He hired his little brother, Phil, who runs a podcast company. I understand that, I guess, in some areas, Department of Defense, podcasts, I guess they kind of go hand in hand, I guess. You tell me. First DEI hire. Second. PD was the first. Phil was the second. Third DEI hire. Now he's bringing his wife to defense meetings. Think about what I'm telling you. He's bringing his wife to defense meetings. It appears that he's trying to set her up for a position in the Department of Defense. She was a supervisor at Fox News. So if you work at Fox News, or if you run a podcast company, you get to run the Defense Department. You can't make this shit up, folks. And if you ask the MAGA cult, those nuts who just follow blindly, they'll say that who else would you want to work with than your little brother or your wife? I have no clue where this is headed, but it can't be good. It can't be good for the country. It can't be good for the men and women in our armed forces, but I guess it's good for the Hegseths. Who's next? Your cousin Willie? You're going to promote him to a general? This segment, we want to give an update on the Lewis twins, Quadir and Nazir, who were found fatally shot in Towns County, Georgia on Bell Mountain, which is about 90 miles from their home. They were laid to rest on March 28th. May they rest in peace. But we need answers, folks. I discussed this case a couple weeks ago on my podcast, but I want to make sure that we keep giving you updates and keep the pressure on the authorities to come up with what the hell happened to those boys. For folks who don't know, they left to go to the airport to visit friends in Boston. The airport is about 40 miles south of their home in Lawrenceville, Georgia, but they ended up 90 miles north of their home in Towns County, where somebody tragically ended their life. We're asking for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to put out more information and give this family the information that they need, that they should have. I don't understand how, with these circumstances, there wouldn't have been a ton more information that they could release. So we're going to stay on this story until we get answered. And I'm telling you, do not let this story rest. Because if they could do that to those twins, they could do it to your children. They could do it to my children. So, folks, unless you've been hiding in the cave or under a rock, you've heard that Trump unleashes tariff wars on the world, leaving the United States once again in a bad position with black eyes. We have a president who's an idiot. And most folks, even the ones who voted for him, they know he's an idiot, but they don't care. Like I told you before, he gave them what they wanted. It doesn't matter what he does to the country, as long as socially they think that their social status was elevated when he got into office.
We go now to President Trump to get his thoughts on why so many people voted for him when he was clearly the worst possible choice for a president ever.
Basically, they're all a bunch of dumb fucks. When I said I would lower taxes, they thought I meant theirs. And when I said I would be cutting programs, they thought I meant someone else's. They are easily fooled because they're dumb as rocks.
What I think is happening as we speak is that the rest of the world is saying, look, we gave the United States a break. We gave them a pass in 2016. You know that you're supposed to elect a qualified, intelligent, knowledgeable person for the highest position in your country, but not us. We decided in 2016 we're going to elect a movie, reality show / TV personality, a failed businessman. You know the deal. A sexual abuser, the con artist, convicted felon. It goes on and on and on. But then you did it again. We, meaning the rest of the world, can't sit around and wait for him to destroy everything these countries have built, including the United States, over the last 5 or 6 generations. So we're going to bond together and push back and let the chips fall where they may. And that, folks, is something you better be afraid of. And we have nobody to blame but ourselves. So don't look around and say, oh, this country or that country. No, look in the mirror at your country, at your so-called leaders. And no matter how much damage he does, how many stupid things he says, you're going to have these politicians who fall right in line, bend the knee, kiss his boots, and the madness goes on and on and on. Thank goodness. I want to send a shout out and a thanks to Wisconsin. Because Wisconsin said, enough's enough. We're going to put a state Supreme Court judge back in office and make sure that she can help protect us against this fool. So my hat's off. I tip my hat to Wisconsin for the election. So, folks, with some of the research we've been doing on tariffs, we've run into some questions that are pretty common. So we want to answer some of those questions or attempt to answer some of those questions. First question.
Why do you think Trump was able to implement these tariffs?
When you're able to convince the misinformed electorate and you have all 3 branches of the government under one party, if you have a president who's bent on destroying the economy, there's no checks and balances in place to stop him.
How do you think the world will react to Trump's tariffs?
I believe that you're going to start seeing countries bond together to protect their economy, which is going to be a disaster for the United States, but it's inevitable now. I believe that what he set in motion is going to be nothing but bad news for America, and we just need to buckle up and be ready for what's coming.
And how do you think it'll end?
That's a hard question, but I believe, for one, that these tariffs themselves are a distraction. I don't believe Trump cares how it ends. I believe that he intentionally figured out that this was worth it. This type of chaos was worth it in order to distract folks so he can continue siphoning money out of the budget so he can give tax breaks to his rich billionaires.
This episode of Al's Joint is brought to you by Jackpot.
I myself believe that this is part of a bigger plan, and he's willing to sacrifice our economy in an effort to get those tax breaks for his buddies. I want to thank folks for joining me this week on Al's Joint. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and like and share with your friends.